Second Nature is so back. The first episode, at least that we're recording in 2026 here, back with our favorite recurring guest, Mr. Stephen Holmberg. Steve, good to see you again, buddy.
Good to
Happy
see
New
you. How
Year.
are you?
Good, good. Of
Good.
course, Aaron Lutzi now in his fresh new home studio. Lutzi, share with the
Yeah.
people
Look
what's
at that.
yeah.
What do you think, huh? It's still a work in progress here, but it feels pretty sweet to be podcasting from an actual office as opposed to a guest room. I feel like my quality of life is dramatically increased now that I have a complete four walls that are just focused in on Super Rider and Second Nature. We'll see how this all shakes out, but here we are, work in progress. I still got to put stuff on the walls, but I got the books up. That's the most important part.
Life changing. I mean,
Raise the game.
As somebody who now has a detached outdoor office slash studio, it is probably the greatest thing I've ever spent money on in my entire life. So now you've got your little think chamber at home in your new home, Lutzi. And yeah, guys, we got a fun docket here today. Before we launch into it, last time I saw Steve Holmberg was at the running event where we participated in a panel together, got to hang out a little bit. And I learned one thing while I was there, Lutzi, that I think makes everything else make sense. Did you know that Steve Holmberg is a graduate of the Harvard Business School, Aaron Lutzi?
Minor flex.
Just a
Okay.
minor flex. I was getting ready for our panel, so I'm on Insight Accelerator, just like poking around on the website to determine how I need to properly introduce Steve on the panel. And I'm like, oh, he's got a Harvard MBA. Everything makes sense now. Steve, are you blushing?
I am blushing a lot. Yeah, I might have spent some time in Cambridge. It was good.
No
Thanks for
big
bringing that
deal.
up and embarrassing me right from the start. Yeah,
I
good.
think Dartmouth undergrad, is that right?
Dartmouth undergrad. Yeah,
All right, so we know who the intellectual powerhouse is on this episode.
Not at
We bring in the big guns when we got to talk about important topics. And today, the idea is to start the year to just kind of look ahead to 2026 and maybe even a little bit beyond that, talk about some trends that we're all noticing within the outdoor ecosystem and contextualize sort of what it means, why they matter. Steve, I know you've put a lot of thought into this. You have a bunch of bullet points. I do too. I think we're going to have some overlap, some places where we agree, some places where we disagree. Lutzi, I'm sure will have a lot to contribute. But Steve, maybe jump in with whatever is most exciting you as we enter a new year.
sure. So I love starting with the consumer and what's happening with the consumer first, because I think that very much shapes our industry and where we're headed. And so if we think about participation, let's start there. My prediction for 2026 is you're going to see this idea of casual outdoor participation and sport participation continue to rise. It's going to continue to do well. It has been doing well over the past few years. So people that are participating a couple times a year. But what I think we're going to see is a continued rise in core participation. So people that are participating pretty frequently, people who will call themselves that sport. So I'm a runner or I'm a trail runner, etc. And you're going to start to see that rise. And what's interesting is if you watch general sport participation, according to SFIA, you're seeing that core participation growing year over year for a number of years, which is nice to see. But when you look at the outdoor participation, you've seen that decline pretty significantly during the pandemic. And part of that is because we saw an uptick in participation in total, but a lot of these sort of smaller niche activities that you need people to do with ended up sort of constricting a little bit. So you lost some of that core participation. What we saw in 2024, though, is a nice rise back to core. And we've been sort of below our operating numbers since 2007. And so you've seen an uptick in 2024. I expect that to continue. I expect people to continue to start to see themselves as a core athlete and start to pursue individual sports a little bit more seriously. And we're going to start to see that number rise, which is really good. And I'll add as well, it also feels like we're at a moment where core is cool again. It's kind of fun to watch these consumers and athletes start to really niche down into sports. And you're seeing brands niche down and connect with them in that same way, which we'll talk about next. And so that's going to continue to build this core. And I think the interesting part about this for brands is to continue to connect with that casual consumer. Like I think that that is a place that we're going to continue to need to serve and help them become better athletes. But I think there's an opportunity to return to that core in order to serve that core with authentic, innovative product. And what I'm not saying is not everything has to be top of mountain. It doesn't have to be pinnacle, but it needs to serve the people that are doing it on a regular basis.
So, in other words, Steve, you're looking at more technical, innovative product, or and maybe a more serious orientation from the consumer towards the sports that they participate in, rather than something that is more casual and less official.
Yes. So over the last few years, people have been experimenting with a number of different activities. I think
Okay.
this is the year that they're going to focus in on one or two activities and do those fairly seriously. And we're going to see this nice boom in this core enthusiast, core participant.
Anything
I
you want
love
to
it.
add there, Lucy?
I love this. I mean, I feel like this is happening in so many different ways. You look at the media landscape as well. It used to be that you had to, serve the mass and try to trend and all that when it came to media. Now you can have these like hyper niche communities because people have kind of found their different tribes and stuff. And I feel like in the sports now it's happening for that too, where you can really find your tribe and you can be a part of it and you can sort of lock in on these core things. I wonder if it's also sort of like you've been kind of dabbling in this long enough that you sort of have to now commit to it, kind of in or out. And so
Yeah.
now people are finally locking in. From the mountain bike side of things, we had that big boom in 2020 and it's been kind of this like steady decline and sort of like I don't even know what to how to categorize it, but I would love to see people kind of like lock in on where they're going to be in the sport and really get kind of serious about it. Like, hey, I've invested in this. I put time into this. I'm really going to like take this year and go in on it. And it'll be interesting to see how brands and how media and and events even kind of foster the community that comes with that core participation as well. How do people think about playing a role in that process, and how do they sort of take this insight and run with it? If more people are really truly engaging with the sport, how do we be a part of that?
I love the idea too. I mean, that they're not unrelated things. The way the consumer's showing up, the way the brands are showing up, and the way the media is influencing, how those two things interact with each other. Steve, what's point number two for you? Prediction number
All
two.
all right. Point number two is really centered around brands. So now that we know that about the consumer, let's take a look at how brands are going to interact and engage. And I think as we look at 2026, 2026 is a big year. It's always, anytime you have an Olympics that's happening and World Cup, etc., like everybody's paying attention to sport. And sport is sort of becomes the forefront of what people are talking about. And generally what we've seen in the past is bigger brands tend to do very well during these times because they are known as the brand that is associated with sport. And therefore, they see that rising tide. It's been interesting to watch the bigger brands over the last couple of years, though, kind of have a harder time during some of these moments, or harder time during throughout the year. And so I'm interested to see how it plays out for them to start. I think the big brands will swing and miss this year. I think there'll be pockets of brilliance that come from these brands, but I don't know if that brilliance is going to be enough to rise the tide for that entire brand, right? Like, will that translate towards sales 365 for them across the board? Who I do think will do well is actually these mid-sized brands. So as we go back to that idea of core participation, people are going to look for authentic brands that are associated with those sports or activities that they do. And as a result, the better known smaller brands, mid-sized brands, they will tend to do well. And I think we're going to see continued stealing of share and growth out of those brands. And then when we think of smaller brands, as much as it pains me to say, I think some are going to hit home runs and then some are going to strike out. And based on what I've said in terms of the core, you would expect people actually to want those authentic core brands that are on the smaller side. I think what the hard part they're facing at the moment is there's a lot of inventory in the marketplace, and there are a lot of brands trying to do very similar things. And so I think you're going to have one or two that are going to pop, but you're going to have several others that have come to the market at the same time, just unfortunately fall flat while they try to compete. And so, the interesting thing for brands to just keep in mind is it's the year of authenticity. Continue to be authentic to the sport and the activity, and try to build product that supports that. And I think if you do that, you will continue to sort of resonate with the consumers and participants that are out there.
Okay. Good discussion to have here, Lucy. If you don't mind, I'll go next because we have a disagreement here, and I should preface this with the fact that I trust Steve's instincts more than my own. So let's just put that out. But
we're testing it. We're
like
pressure testing.
Yeah, let's talk about it.
So I think there's this macro theme of the barbell effect happening everywhere, where you have to either be a giant to win or like the niche of the niche. And so that would naturally mean the death of the middle. You're saying, Steve, that you effectively think the middle, these mid-sized brands will steal share from the big brands and be able to effectively maybe fight off some of these newer, more disruptive up and coming brands. I think this is the year 2026 where we officially see like Nike's comeback reflected in the stock. Same with Lululemon, these brands that have just been punished by Wall Street. They finally, get back on the, the growth trajectory that they had enjoyed up until, things started to deteriorate in the last couple of years. So maybe not hitting all-time highs, but maybe, stock rebounding 10, 20%. And we should say these stocks have been cut in half, in the last couple of years. So I think this is the year of the big brands, especially with the World Cup, with the Olympics, where they actually make a bigger comeback. Also, with this barbell idea, the tiny brands continue to take share and also like gain cultural significance, something that we talked about at TRE a bunch. Brands that I have noticed who I think are doing great, obviously Ray Research, who, we have clearly talked about a million times here on the podcast. Half Days is a cool sort of more women's focused snow brand that Kyle Siegel, actually the founder of Raid, put me onto, and they're apparently growing like crazy now. Also, Mount to Coast and Norda were probably like the two winners of TRE that are both, maturing, but still very small relative to the rest of the competitive ecosystem and in running in particular. But really, my point is that I think the mid-market brands struggle in 2026, and maybe even looking further than that. And Lucy, this is maybe something that would be interesting for you to opine on too, because one thing I noticed that I think fits into this prediction on my part is the fact that Keegan Swenson, who is the best mountain biker, the best off-road cyclist right now, you could say, moved from Santa Cruz bikes to Specialized, which to me was sort of like an indication of a mid-market brand, Santa Cruz, going with the giant, right? And then maybe on the other side, Kate Courtney is with Allied. Is that like an example of a star athlete with a small brand too? Again, going to this idea of barbell, death of the middle. Comments from both of you. Maybe Lucy, you can start.
There's a lot of nuance on the Keegan and the Kate side of things. That would be a podcast on its own to unpack. One of the things that, when you guys were talking through this, the question I have actually is, have we priced in the shifting landscape of like tariffs just changing left, right, and center all the time? Have we just priced that into 2026? Have brands sort of figured that out? I feel like the bigger brands had, bigger implications if things, they had to deal with it. It was maybe an inconvenience for everybody, but there was a lot of focus put into like trying to figure this whole thing out. And surely things aren't going to get any easier this year. But have we just priced that in automatically of the cost of doing business when it comes to looking ahead at 2026 and beyond?
I think to some degree, and I'm happy to hit that a little bit later when we talk about market size and what's going to happen there. But Dylan, I'd love to respond because I agree. And let me add a little more context to help define a little bit where this is. I'll give you an example. I want to talk about the small brands first. I agree. Like Kyle at Raid, that's a home run. Like he's doing great. Like I think of Half Days, they're doing great. I recently was looking for a jacket and bibs for my wife to go skiing, and was looking at a number of different traditional brands and looked at Half Days, and then I searched like when searching Half Days, like what other brands are out there? And there are a number of other small brands that are out there that compete now directly with Half Days. And so while I think Half Days will win, I think some of those other brands that have come to that market really quickly right behind them may not have that same tailwind. So I think for everyone, there might be two or three smaller brands that we don't even know about that just couldn't get off the ground or couldn't quite make it there. And so I agree with you. And that's my nuance to that side of it. The bigger brands, you're right. There is, to some degree, a barbell effect that happens. But if we live in a world where we believe authenticity is really important for these athletes, and if we do believe core may be on the rise, and we are seeing small brands resonate because of that core, I think it's really hard for big brands to play that game. I think they're able to talk about talk about sport, or they're able to talk about outdoors, but it's harder to be authentic to or it's hard to be something specific to everyone without becoming somewhat generic. And I worry about the generic way that the bigger brands have to show up that may not fully resonate with everybody the same way the mid-size is doing, and that's those smaller brands are doing as well. And so that's my fear a little bit in 2026. But again, a healthy Nike for the industry is really important. A healthy Adidas for the industry is really important. And so I'm hoping there can be some turns that happen there, and we do see some greatness that comes out. But that's a little bit of just reading the tea leaves from the past. A little bit of my concern is across the board.
So the stocks that have really suffered in this category, things like VF, which owns the North Face, Deckers, which owns Hoka, Nike, Lululemon. That's just off the top of my head, stocks that are down like 50%. I think they're all gonna rebound. But I think another interesting question, which we don't need to get to now, is like, how do you even define the mid-market brands too? Because like Nike is so much bigger than somebody even like ASICS. So it's like, is ASICS a mid-market brand? Well, they still do 5 billion in revenue. Like they are still a giant. So, but then I think also for somebody like Raid and Kyle, it's like eventually when you grow your way into a mid-market brand. And is there maybe a disincentive now in 2026 to grow to that point? You know, do you grow your way into like a place where it's hard to compete either with the niche or with the giants? I don't know, maybe a fun conversation for a future episode.
Yeah, Brooks is a good example of that, of how their strategy is, they have the opportunity to expand. If they want to grow, they could expand into other sports, or they could expand at least from running to training. But they're choosing to expand into new geos in order to find that growth. And stay authentic and core to running. And that's an interesting choice that they're making to stay authentic, which is good to see.
Fun discussion. Prediction number 3.
All right, prediction number 3. In the sea of sameness that we're seeing from a product side in the marketplace at the moment, I believe brand marketing is going to resonate better than product marketing. And so product marketing tends to be focused on an individual product. It tends to talk about features and benefits of that product. But if a lot of competitors are all talking about the same thing and we're not seeing a lot of innovation or things that are new coming to the marketplace, I think the idea of brand marketing is going to resonate better. It goes back to that idea of core and authenticity. People are looking for brands that represent them or the space that they're in. And so as they niche down into those smaller brands, they're going to see these brands talking about it and believe that they're authentic in the space, and therefore they will want to connect with that brand. And I think we've seen that with Satisfy and Bandit as some examples in the marketplace.
Ooh, so I gotta shout out Matt Trappy on this one too, because he posted something in his Substack. He said every single booth at TRE leads with the same innovation in tech. It's the same story, and that makes it a non-story.
Yes.
You're
Yes.
not differentiating yourself on tech in the room. Sorry, that's table stakes. I texted him, and I just all caps, louder for the people in the back. And then actually, Peter Abraham had another thing. He posted something about the bike industry. A
Yes.
2024 YouGov survey even found that 62% of bike riders cannot clearly explain the difference between the top 10 global bike brands. Like, the product story is out. It has to be brand story.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. And Trappy, we should say his Substack is called A Matter of Brand. He is all about brand marketing. So he is definitely reading from his own music sheet or whatever that saying is. And I have something here that I would love to respond with and have you guys build on to, or at least give me your feedback, because this is definitely a place where I very much agree with your prediction, Steve. And being at TRE, it was so clear how many brands there are that are making great product. And it is very hard for them to, credibly differentiate that product to a customer or to a retailer. And in running, I was thinking about like, well, what was like the most differentiated product in 2026? And the thing that came to mind for me was the Radical Airflow shirt that Nike made, that they're now positioning under the ACG umbrella, and they're going to build out the platform with like a short sleeve version, a hat, a singlet, etc. So you can see how this innovation can be part of a product story and an innovation story that other brands are going to have to catch up to in the same way that they did with the original Nike 4% shoe. But there is just this massive trend that I have this thesis like about the great commoditization of everything right now, about how everything is being commoditized, where like basically anybody who has enough financing and at least a little bit of experience can go to Asia and make a freaking great product. So if you can't, if anybody can do it, then it's very hard to differentiate on the product, which means you must differentiate on the brand, like the purpose and the values and the vibe. And this, I have to say, is something we feel with Free Trail a lot too, because it's not just in product, but it's also with media. Like, anybody can make a podcast, anybody can post on Instagram. And so we also feel this like, okay, we're existing in this sea of sameness, not only when we look at the products in the space, but also like, the other people who are kind of doing what we do. And so naturally in those environments, my instinct is like, I want to do something totally different. Like, what is the Radical Airflow equivalent for Free Trail? So I don't think this is something unique only to the product ecosystem. I think it's this macro commoditization of everything right now that the internet has led to, and that I think AI will only accelerate. That's my response. I agree 100%. I think it's part of this broader, massive commoditization of everything.
Yeah. And if I was to counter myself a little bit, going back to the bigger brands and how they, to your point earlier, in terms of you believe they may do well, they're the brands that have the dollars and marketing power to actually do a lot of that as well. And so that in to only add to your point on that, it'll be interesting to see if they do it and if it executes properly is the interesting question.
Was there like a major bike innovation in 2025?
Oh, there's always something. There's a bunch of, I mean, they're trying to make 32-inch wheels happen right now, which I'm not feeling. They look like, I mean, I felt the same way when they launched 29ers, but yeah, I don't know. There's always something going on, I actually wanted to ask you guys a question, because I'm sort of on the sidelines on this one a little bit, but I know both of you have had a little bit more of a front row seat to some of the Nike ACG stuff. I've seen some massive stuff coming out of them, not just from the product side, but also like Dylan with Gorge and with Broken Arrow and everything. They're dropping like huge prize purses, and they're supporting a lot of stuff on a really big level. So not only are they like pushing the limits on product stuff, but also on the marketing and supporting the scene side of things. Do you feel like, and it's got to force these brands to compete, but do you think these brands are going to compete, or do you think that they're going to let Nike run away with it? Because I feel like Nike's really investing in a major way, and turning a lot of heads, not just with product, but also with support of the industry. Do you think that the other big brands are going to respond?
Steve, you go first.
I think the big brands have to, other brands have to respond. That being said, I think Nike has the budget to do what it needs to do in order to do that properly. And at least what we're seeing in trail is they've done a very nice job coming in. They're trying to do it the right way, is the way it appears. And so good on them for that. I think if we're going to just talk about trail running very specifically at the moment and ACG, what I believe may happen is it's almost a rising tide for everybody, where all these smaller brands have been connecting with a central community that participate in that sport. With a bigger investment from Nike, I think you're going to get more people or more exposure to trail running itself. It will add into the sport at the same time. So I think there might be the rising tide that it creates that a lot of people will benefit from at the same time. Or the pie is going to get bigger is another way to just describe it. Instead of trying to steal share of the pie, it's just going to become a bigger pie. That's the power that Nike brings to the table.
So
Dylan?
interesting. So interesting. Yeah, I don't think I have a lot to add here other than, we've had a chance to work with ACG a bunch through Free Trail. And I agree with Steve in that I think they've taken a really intentional, thoughtful approach to it. They haven't just tried to point a bazooka at the sport, come in, say, hey, we're Nike, get out of our way. We own this place now. And I think, that it's been the way that's been confirmed in my head is the fact that people seem very receptive to know what their plans are, and to see them make investments in races like ours at Gorge Waterfalls and at Broken Arrow that does have, financial implications for the professional athletes. There's a sense that okay, they're investing in helping people, not only have a fun racing experience, but earn a living, at the front of the race, and not just Nike athletes either. So I think that's important for the sport. It helps the entire sport level up. I think it does put pressure on other big races to start thinking about how they are going to position their prize purses. And, those big races we don't have to name here, but, there are a lot around the world and most of them have sponsors that aren't Nike. So how are those sponsors thinking about, whether they need to step up their, support of the pro athletes through things like appearance fees and prize purses that obviously would only serve to enhance the, just market power of the professional athletes in the sport. And yeah, obviously they're making great products. We saw Caleb Olson win Western States wearing that Radical Airflow shirt. Like I said, I think that was the biggest innovation in running in 2025, at least that I could come up with on short notice. And I expect that to, be one of these transcendent things that then, just like everybody has a super shoe now, maybe every brand has a super shirt in 2 years.
I feel like Nike is doing what we hoped they would do,
Yes.
And there was a period of time there where we didn't know if that was going to happen. And in a way, it almost feels like a relief that they got it, and this is going to be fun to watch. And like your earlier point about the big brands hitting home runs, I think this is a home run with ACG. I'm just so curious to see if there's a response or if these other big brands kind of let them run away with it. I don't know. I can't wait. This is
hard to stop that train. Once that train goes, it's a hard one to stop.
But so in trail running, before we move on, just one more thing. If you think of the brands who were big winners in 2025, it's the big ones, right? It's like Nike, Western States, obviously Hoka had another great year. ASICS, they don't even have a big team. And people don't think of ASICS as a trail brand, but Tom Evans won UTMB, Ben Beeman was second. Sarah Alonso was number 3 in Trail Runner of the Year. They crushed it. So it's these brands like Scarpa, La Sportiva, Kraft, Normal, those types of brands I feel like are the mid-market, right? But then on the other end of the barbell, you've got the Mount to Coast, the Nordas, the Speedlands, maybe Satisfy's almost mid market now, but I don't know. That's what I think. Is like it's starting to show up in trail running where it's a big brand sport. I mean, Adidas too. Adidas actually didn't mention them. I mean, they're obviously a major winner too. Ruth Croft won UTMB. Abby Hall won Western States. Those are two biggest races in the world, owned or won by Adidas athletes.
Mm-hmm.
So, but so what we didn't say is like Salomon, the North Face, like, where are they?
Yeah. Harder to compete.
Yeah, I think going into, just going back to this point of like brand marketing will resonate better, all these opportunities that are being created by Nike investing in these big events and all that, they're going to have stories to share. They're going to have brand marketing, elements baked in. It's not just about like cranking out good product, which is now totally table stakes. Now you have to have the brand marketing. So how are you investing in community? How are you investing in racing, in media, in storytelling? What does that look like? And how do you express that to the core, which is now growing?
Mm-hmm.
We should have Trappy on to talk about this more and do like an analysis of how brands are positioning the brand marketing part of things in a way that stands out and is differentiated. I think that'd be a great discussion. I love that prediction, Steve. I 100% agree. What's next on the docket?
Next is product. And you sort of kicked us off a little bit with it, Dylan, but the idea that 2026 is going to be the year of refinement over innovation. So I think there's this, we've been pushing so hard to innovate. And have we almost gone too far? Have we pushed innovation to a point that we are now going beyond, in many cases, people's needs? Like I think of runners out on the road and you just watch who's out there. They're all running in cotton t-shirts, right? It's like they go back to the kind of basics that they love. And yet everybody's talking about really like ultra technical and the ACG stuff is amazing, right? Like I love that it pushes it there. But I wonder if people are over delivering on the tech and under delivering on that connection, which I think is creating that brand marketing. But I think you're seeing it in the product as well. It's going to be hard to continue to innovate in 2026. I haven't seen a lot in preview that's going to say, oh, 2026 is going to be the game changer in innovation. What I think, at least what I've seen so far, is it's actually going to be a year of tuning. It's taking the products that they have and making them better. It's like it's either a better fit or better comfort or better flexibility, you name it, whatever sport you're playing or whatnot. I think you're going to see this tuned product that's going to start to, again, feel authentic. It's going to be the right shoe for the right sport, right activity, or it's the right jacket for the right activity. You're going to see that continued pushed by brands. And then I think 2027 is actually going to be a bigger year for innovation, especially on the trail running side.
So the pendulum is swinging towards non-technical innovation this year in 26 and back towards technical innovation in 27.
Yeah.
I mean, this fits into the idea of sea of sameness too. And like, when everybody's making hyper technical apparel, right? Then the cool kids want to wear the cotton tee with holes in it, Yeah. And then when everybody's wearing the cotton tees with holes in it, then everybody wants like the Gore-Tex jacket again, right?
Yeah.
And similarly, like with the media stuff too, it's like, well, everybody's got a trail running podcast now. So like, what could I do that's like, the opposite of that,
Yes.
Should we make a print magazine, for example? And I don't know. Yeah. But then of course, then the pendulum goes that way. And then,
That's exactly it.
Yeah.
I'd be curious to know where gravel falls in for running. Obviously, gravel is quite established in the cycling world, but does that fall into the refinement or innovation? Because I feel like it's sort of like a version of a trail running shoe. I feel like it's not a new thing. But I was in China a couple weeks ago and I saw in the Solomon store a complete display for gravel shoes, and I was like, whoa, this is weird. But also, where do you guys think? I think this is probably more along the lines of prediction. What happens to gravel running in 2026?
This is so fun, and I think it brings a lot of things together because, like, to a large degree, the gravel idea is a brand play to just give Salomon a different view of what most people do already. Like there's the vast majority of people don't have the luxury of what I have, and that there's hundreds of miles of beautiful trails that I can run to from my front door here. Most people live in a neighborhood, in a subdivision, in the suburbs or whatever. They do most of their running on the road, or they run a road to get to a trail. So the gravel product does have a natural and valuable application in that case, in that people will be running on the road. So the shoe performs well there. You're not running with like this super technical, deep lugged Vibram outsole that's made for technical terrain to get to the trail, right? You have something that can perform adequately from the front door to the trail system. I think that's super interesting. But also it's like, well, is it that much of an innovation, or is it just more of a brand and storytelling opportunity?
Yeah. We used to call it road to trail, right? Like, what's the
Right.
road to trail shoe? And then thank goodness for biking came up with gravel. Like, okay, now it's a one word thing, right? Like we can name it that, which is really good. I think if we're going to be specific on trail running, it does feel like they're road, and I said this last year on the podcast. Road is always a couple years ahead of where trail is, and a lot of times it feels like people try to bring road to trail, and I think the hard part about that is trail is different, and I think everybody's now recognizing that. That it is not the same in terms of what those needs are. And that's why I say I think 2027 might be more on the innovation side of figuring out, what is the performance race side? What is that for them? Because what we saw at TRE is a lot of trail. Like the story became like almost an even split between road and trail while there, which was amazing to see. And for many brands, that's the first lever that they can pull is marketing to say, hey, I am actually interested in where people are going and I want to serve them. So I'll dial up my marketing, but it takes 2 years to create that product. And so while they've dialed up the marketing, they're still in the process of developing the product that's actually going to come to market. And that's a little bit of why I think 2027 is going to see a little bit more of that innovation side.
Awesome. I have one sort of product related prediction here that we could squeeze in while we're on the topic. And that is that durability is the new sustainability. Steve, I'd love for you to build off this too. But subjectively, my feeling is that nobody's talking about sustainability anymore because of what we just said. It became a sea of sameness. Everybody was talking about sustainability. So everybody kind of tuned out. Now it seems like at least a handful of people are really leaning into the durability and the reduced necessity to replace the product, and therefore there's sort of a downstream sustainability story, but it's not just directly sustainability. Do you have any comments on that? Have you done any work on this through Insight Accelerator?
It is a narrative we have been hearing for a while, actually, in multiple, not just a sports and outdoor industry. It's actually something that we're seeing across the board. But you said it perfectly. I fully back that narrative.
See, Lutzi, I basically have a Harvard MBA. That's just...
That was one of our mutual friends had a line that was like the ultimate sustainability is a product that you never want to get rid of or that you never want to throw away. So I feel like durability is replacing sustainability in that if you don't ever have to toss it out, then you've
So I didn't mean to interrupt you.
Oh, go ahead.
But I think it's interesting because I think I've seen stuff. I think Steve might be able to comment on this too, that in market research, when you ask a consumer, how much do you care about sustainability or how much would you factor it into a purchasing decision? They may say one thing publicly, but their behavior would indicate something else.
Yeah, it's fun to go out and do the research, and you ask people about their sustainability, and they say, "Oh yeah, really important to me." While they're holding their Starbucks coffee, drinking their SUV, and having Amazon packages delivered multiple times.
Exactly.
While you're there, it's what they say and what they do can be very different things. But I think there is this, and what I'm interested in truly, and I haven't done the research on it, is if durability does become more of the story. I think it's an easy thing to grab onto in some ways, but I'm also interested if that's a post-purchase rationalization. Like, are people really loving Norda shoes because they're supposedly supposed to last for a very long period of time? Or is that I purchased the shoes and I need a reason to be able to spend that money, and it's because it's really durable, and it'll last the longer period of time? I'm interested to see the human psychology that's actually behind of it.
Quick tangent here, but Steve, I think you and I talked about this at TRE, but Norda I felt like was one of the major winners of TRE and of 2025 period. And it was announced, I think, a week or 2 weeks after TRE that Zania had invested again in Norda. I still think they're my minority shareholder, but they had been an earlier investor. Now following along indicates they really believe in this platform. And Zania just being kind of like the main financier behind Norda is, I think, really interesting, being that they are sort of a luxury label, a luxury fashion house, not necessarily like an outdoor performance, holding company.
Yeah, it is interesting. It actually leads us a little bit maybe into the next one as well. Is
Perfect.
there is there is outdoors becoming luxury in a way? And it's actually a concern that I have of, does that become a barrier? We talked about this, not this past TRE, but the TRE before. Is that a barrier from people starting? And so let's talk about the next one. So marketplace. So if you think of the overall market size, what's happening there? And my prediction for 2024 is actually similar to what's been happening, but we're going to see a little bit more of a shift in the proportion. But let me back up before I dive into telling you exactly what it is. The narrative out there is generally the marketplace is flat in terms of the market size. We're seeing a market size that stays pretty consistent. It kind of goes up or down. It depends on the sport that you're in. But generally it's been flat. Um, but that's been created by this interesting dynamic underneath. So if you double click, and very few people actually kind of go into this, and those that do, great work. But what you've been seeing is that the average selling price of product has been increasing. So what they call ASP has been on the rise over the last couple of years, and what you've seen is units declining. So the number of units being sold is sort of on the downward trend, and so those two have been balancing themselves out to create a what looks like a stable marketplace. When I look at that, though, that makes me very concerned because it's only so far you can go with prices before you have to stop because consumers can no longer afford the product. But with declining units, then people are not purchasing as much. And maybe this goes back to the durability side, that people don't need to purchase twice a year or once a year. They can purchase on a longer time frame. But that decline in units actually makes me a little worried about what the health is of the industry. So I look at the future, and if we start to cap out prices that people are willing to pay, and you see this units continue to potentially decline, you might see a shrinking market size for us in a couple different places.
It's so interesting. I don't have much to add except for that I see it in my own behavior.
Mm.
Everything has gotten so expensive now that I just buy fewer numbers of things. But I still, like, I've always been drawn to not like the luxury hyper premium stuff, but I like this stuff that feels like craft product. In fact, I've got a good BPC for it today. But instead of buying a few of those things, I may just buy one at this point.
Mm-hmm.
I think your recommendation here on this one too, of like not having the rising prices limit access for casual participants, even though we're talking about the core kind of getting bigger and stronger, we still have to think about that funnel and how are we going to bring people into the brand, and what is the role of that specific product, maybe to make something that's a little bit easier, maybe not as technical for them just to get started. We still have to welcome people into the sport, and it can't just be about the core. And so that bifurcation there is going to be a tricky one, I think, for a lot of people to kind of manage.
And I
Yeah.
think this is one of those areas too where it's not unique to our category either, right? Like, this is, I think, true with restaurants now too. It's so
Mm-hmm.
expensive to eat out that
Yeah.
instead of going out 2-3 times a week, maybe you're going out just once, but like spending the same that you did when you were going out 2 or 3 times a week, right, Steve?
Mm-hmm. Cars. I put cars in the same boat. Like,
Yeah.
cars have gotten incredibly expensive, and I think cars is another interesting way you could look at it. If for our industry of as you continue to raise that bar of what prices are for different models, they are still producing lower cost product to bring to market, and so it ends up being a product um, uh, structure and a price structure that they're able to work through. So it might be the opportunity to bring in more product for the casual, but still sort of have that nicer product at the end of the day. There's a world that it works for both. I just hope we don't own the world doesn't only focus on higher prices
Yeah.
and not be able to serve that core the casual user at the same time.
So how about this again to bring things together with the pendulum story and the sea of sameness story,
Mm-hmm.
because on the other end of the spectrum we have Terragnota, Alex King, who we had on the podcast, and subjectively I feel like they're doing super well. Maybe not financially. He's very transparent about their finances and he's on the way towards it being what seems like a healthy company, but right now is still, the business is catching up. But subjectively, I feel like I see the product everywhere. And maybe that's just an indication of the consumer being so fatigued with the high prices of everything. It's like, I don't care what, this fancy brand feels like anymore, what it says about me and my identity as a person. I'm interested in something that's functional, that's useful, that doesn't, cause me to spend half my paycheck to participate in the sport that I want to.
Yeah, it's sometimes the idea of affordable luxury, where maybe we're not going out and buying an expensive car or expensive clothes or whatnot, or not clothes, but those bigger ticket items like houses, etc. But if you are going to treat yourself and make you feel sort of important and valuable, you might be able to afford that pair of shoes instead. So they kind of replace that in potentially more challenging economies. Yeah.
I wonder, going back to the discussion we previously had about gravel, I think about in the cycling industry how new disciplines have fueled massive growth in the sport and ultimately become a lifeline between gravel bikes and really that industry just like cropping
Mhm.
up out of nowhere, as well as e-bikes. I mean, love them or hate them, both of those two categories have more or less been lifelines for the cycling industry over the last decade.
Mhm.
And so I wonder if like creating that new category in running actually becomes a bit of a lifeline for the brands that embrace it.
Yeah. I think that for a lot of outdoor sports
Yeah.
across the board, like can we start to dimensionalize these and bring more people in that maybe like shorter distances in trail running and then the people that love long distances, you have your flavor of the sport that you can participate in, brings more people in, and so I love that. Yeah.
The other example of this in trail running is the North Face made a shoe that's literally called the Off Trail. So where gravel is for the road to trail crossover person, this is for somebody who, is probably doing stuff that's so technical, so out there, so remote that it's a good product equipment option for that specific consumer. That is obviously a very small cohort of potential consumers. So maybe it's more of a brand play of just like, we're making this off-road option just to signal that, we are about the top of the mountain. I don't
Mhm.
know.
Hmm.
Interesting. Anything else on your list here, Mr. Holmberg?
I got two more. Let's flip over to retail. So what I think, if you were thinking about, hey, core might be on the rise. We're seeing this idea of authenticity is becoming more and more important. The idea that there will be some of those smaller brands that will definitely hit, et cetera, and some of those mid-sized brands. I think what we're going to see on the retail side is that those DTC channels, those smaller brand, mid-sized brand DTC will be the bright spot. It'll be the showcase of where they're able to show what they are from a brand and a product perspective, and I think that's going to resonate with people. And I think people are going to see people kind of move into that space or continue to buy there. I think there's the rest of the channels are going to sort of continue the way they've been. Otherwise, I don't expect other major changes.
Anything to add there, Lucy?
I feel like we got to get Brendan back on here or another
Yeah.
retail expert. I want to know more about sort of the retail landscape and how things are going. And I just want to dig into it a little bit deeper. I think you're right. And I think, part of the small brand DTC is just a function of like there's not a lot of people to manage and deal with that level of stuff. And so DTC is sort of, again, sort of the lifeline of being able to have the brand in the first place. There is some sort of infrastructure that needs to be in place if you're going to support retail operations as a brand. And if you're someone like Alex who is trying to run Terragnota and, do everything, having another person on the team that's only reaching out to retail would be almost impossible. So I just want to know more about the retail landscape in 2026. I want to learn more. I want to hear from the people that are waist
On the
deep in it.
floor. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
But talk about a pendulum swinging. 5 years ago, it was all about how brands were abandoning retailers. And now, the pendulum is very much swinging back to recognizing how important those retailers are for connecting with a consumer and a community.
Yeah.
One more, Steve?
Last one. I think, and not to end on a downer. I don't want to end on a downer. Maybe we can turn this to a
I've got a
positive.
couple before we fully wrap up.
Okay, good. I think one of my biggest concerns in looking at 2026 is really the external threats to sports and outdoors is the my biggest concern for what happens. So while a lot of what we talked about is internal and so on, like that will play out, but I think these external factors such as the rising of prices across the board. So whether milk is more expensive, that makes it harder to buy sports equipment for your teen to be able to play sports or be able to go to that tournament. You've got governmental shifts that are potentially pulling money away from public lands that need to be managed and need to be supported, and if we don't have those, maybe access gets limited or it becomes more challenging to be out there or be safe out there. And then there are also just political forces that are at play that are sort of threatening people or changing the way people engage with sport. And anecdotally, just my daughter plays on a club soccer team, and we're hearing that some teams can't field enough people to be able to play tournaments, etc., because they're worried about ice going to be sort of show up at the tournament, and so they don't let their kids play in the tournament, and that's changing behavior, and that those sort of external threats can really create challenges that the industry has to overcome. And in the past, brands have been pretty helpful sort of in some of that storytelling over the last, let's say, 10 years. It feels like brands are very much focused on the challenging marketplace that they're currently dealing with, whether it's tariffs or whatnot, that they've been a little bit more insular. This could be an opportunity for them to, again, step up and help for whatever investment that needs to be made in order to help promote the space that they're in.
I think I want to add to that I was thinking a lot about like why do the majority of us participate in these sports? Why are we core, participants in the first place? And I feel like mental health has such a big impact on like why I want to be outside alone by myself in a forest. And I feel like that is a huge factor in probably the next couple of years of all these different sports of intensifying the core consumer. People are trying to really manage their mental health and trying to participate as a way to, disconnect from reality a little bit. And I think, the downstream impact of that probably, brands, media, community, events, like we all have to play a role in supporting that as well. And I think that's the stuff that's going to be really important because, ultimately, like we do sports, the act of doing sport can sometimes be uncomfortable, but the outcome, the type 2 fun is the comfort that we get, the, enjoyment, the disconnection, the connection to other people. Like that's so important. And it will play a huge role, I think, in the next years to come.
Yeah. Well, we can devote an entire episode as to how the collapse of civilization will impact the outdoor industry. We'll save that for some other time. All right, I've got three quick ones that I'll bang through here quickly and have you guys respond to because I think they're kind of interesting. One is I think upstart leagues are going to struggle, and by the time this comes out, we did a podcast with the Snow League recently. They just announced a new round of funding. So all indications are they're on good footing. But what we did just see in the news recently is that Grand Slam Track has officially declared bankruptcy. And that is, I think, objectively just a massive embarrassment and failure of an upstart league people can go read the details about how everything played out. I don't know if it was just, terrible mismanagement or if it's an indication that these incumbents are maybe a lot stronger than we realize. And I think as we go into an Olympic year and a World Cup year, the institutions of sporting competition are going to be front and center and therefore probably at their strongest. So does that impact somebody like the Snow League? Like the fact that the Winter Olympics is going to be taking place, does that diminish the Snow League's relevance in 2026? Maybe, but does that say anything about beyond 2026? Maybe not. Who knows? But in general, I think this is something that I'm interested to continue to monitor as we look across sports. There's a lot of these disruptive startup leagues, sort of in every sport at this point. I think maybe in 2026, we start to see those being vulnerable, or maybe conversely, we start to see the strength of the incumbents relative to these upstarts. Sort of similar, I think 2026, this is obviously not rocket science, but AI disruption will become very apparent from especially a brand and storytelling angle. And I don't know exactly how this will play out, but internal creative teams at companies might now have tools to where they don't need to hire agencies to do specific work, or potentially on the other side, maybe it makes the agencies just superpowers and they can either lower their prices and crank up the volume or really jack up the prices and do insane, mind-blowing work. I don't know. But I think what's true is that generative content now is crazy. And it's something that terrifies me personally as somebody who works in the content game. And I think we'll really start to see it in the outdoor industry. I don't know exactly how it'll play out, but again, not a rocket science prediction. And then my final prediction that is less of a downer. I think Lindsey Vonn wins an Olympic medal, completing one of the greatest comebacks for an outdoor athlete in sports history. Those Amazing. Were the three other predictions I have. Upstart league struggle, AI disruption is crazy. Lindsey Vonn wins a medal in Cortina.
Speaking of greatest comebacks in outdoor sports history, Dylan, what's your Hard Rock prediction for this year?
It's unfortunately not looking good for your boy here, but I'm trying my best to get back on the straight and narrow.
I think you have the most support of any runner at that event that I can possibly think of. I think everybody wants to see you go out there and have a good time.
You might be surprised. We'll see. Do you have anything you want to add here, Lindsay, before we close with BPC?
I think we've gone through a lot. I mean, this topic is such a fun one just because we don't know how it's all going to shake out. And it's fun to sort of like throw some stuff at the wall. And then, we should come back at the end of the year and see how we did. We've got it now. We put our flag in the sand. And now let's see how the year goes, see where everybody ends up, and then come back and see how we landed on it all. I've got kind of mixed feelings about this year, but I'm going to try my hardest to make the most of it, and I think everybody else is too. So I can't wait to see how it shakes out.
All right. So speaking of AI, we have to have the AI somehow like give us a summary of what we all said here, so that 12 months from now we can reconvene and grade our prognostication as we make predictions for 2027.
Yeah.
Steve, any other closing comments from you before we go to BPC?
Nope. No, that was the list.
All right. So no pushback on my predictions, which means I have a Harvard MBA. Honorary Harvard graduate Dylan Bowman here. Steve, do you have a BPC? I know you were contemplating.
BPC. Yeah, let's I just wanted to quickly touch on the Field Mag. I don't know if you follow them all on Instagram and whatnot. Well, back to your comment earlier, Dylan, about going to print. We've got Field Mag going to print, and they've got this great magazine. It's been out for a couple months now, but it's a great read. It's fun to check out. That's what I have on my desk at the moment. That's worth sharing.
Really good one. I got to check that out. So that's the first issue of the physical mag.
Yes, this is the first one.
It looks thick. Hold it up again. Hold it sideways. I want to see that. Look at that thing.
Yeah. And so
it's
loaded.
Wow. All right. I'm going to
did a terrible job of that, but for those people, everybody listening, I was showing it terribly.
You want to go next, Aaron?
Okay, one of the things that I saw recently that really got me fired up was a collaboration between Columbia and Star Wars. They made the Endor collection. One of the models for the photos was actually Princess Leia's daughter. Like, how cool is that?
Oh,
I
that's
am a
cool.
complete Star Wars nerd, always have been and likely always will be. But I love the idea of collaboration and like how that sort of like opens doors to bringing new people into the sport or the brand or anything like that. I'm so shocked. I can't think of anyone who has done this with Star Wars, like Endor style stuff, but I always wanted one from like being 6 years old, seeing that movie. I always wanted that coat. Now, I don't know if I'm going to pay $600 or $700 for one, but they look rad. There's also a really cute little Ewok one that it's would look great on my kids. But honestly, I just love it. I think it's really creative and clever, and I'm surprised I haven't seen this done before. But I just love how collaboration can open a whole new lane. We didn't really talk about that at all in predictions, and I don't really know if anybody's got any cool collaborations coming in the outdoor space. But this was one that just kind of like hit me at a different angle. Like we see these technology things, we see these like fashion brand collabs, but collabing with Star Wars, it just hit in a different vein. I don't know. I just really loved seeing it. So,
We,
um,
speaking of brand marketing, we should have the brand marketer from Columbia on because
yeah,
it's been an interesting year for them. As you
yeah,
guys will remember their campaign where it was very polarizing on the internet, but it
oh
was
yeah,
sort of somebody running away from like wild animals or something in the outdoor. And the
that's
critics
right.
sort of said, well, this dissuades people from going outside. It doesn't encourage them from going outside. Plus, they did a collaboration with Kith, which is like,
Hmm.
maybe the coolest streetwear brand in the world. So Star Wars, Kith, and then that brand campaign, it feels like Columbia's really trying to have a second life here and be a lot hipper than they have in years past.
I'm definitely not mad at you got to be trying stuff, you got to be doing stuff, and this, I mean, I hadn't really looked at Columbia in a while, and then when this dropped, I was like, wait, what? And I think a good collaboration can do exactly that. It can get you to kind of uh, give a breath of fresh air to a brand that maybe you hadn't considered in a long time. So I'm excited about this one. I want to quickly add one other thing. Speaking of collaborations, I've used Kitworks as a BPC in the past, but just recently, like officially joined them as one of their ambassadors, and I've been working with those guys to kind of develop out what that ambassador program looks like and stuff. If you haven't seen their stuff, it's great. It's like gear management for cycling, running, climbing, all that stuff. I've been using it for a long time and absolutely love it. But there's a proper ambassador page with yours truly on it that you guys got to check out. But it's been really cool, like working with them and actually getting a chance to kind of put my thumb on the scale with how to approach the program, how to design it in a way that's really compelling for everybody involved. And that's a lot of what I'm trying to do in 2026 is work with brands that we can actually do this kind of stuff where we can build it from the ground up in a really meaningful way for everybody. So I took a lot of lessons from that podcast we did with Jonathan Levitt about creating signal within the partnerships to really truly be able to evaluate it. And so that's my first and most recent expression of exactly that. So
Yeah.
have a look.
Shout out Kitworks, making great product, aligning with Aaron Lutzy, brilliant, and further, I guess, moves forward this model that you're pioneering of being both an athlete ambassador plus a consultant. I need to figure out a way to do this in trail running.
I think there's a huge opportunity because you can kind of speak both languages, and really be that connecting point between the two,
Yeah.
build something that would be really compelling. Like I could go to any other athlete and be like, "Hey, look what we built. This would be something that you would really want to be a part of." In addition to the fact that like their gear is amazing and great and really well considered, but like also the program to work with people, it's built the right way. It's not somebody who's, just like, oh yeah, just post about us on social media and we'll send you product. It's like the detail in which we built it we built it with ambassadors in mind and with the brand in mind, kind of hand in hand. And I think
Yeah.
there's some really special stuff there.
Awesome. Congratulations, buddy. I'll close us down here. My BPC is this amazing, beautiful fleece that I'm wearing here, guys. Santa Claus got this for me, I should say. and I love it. And it's from a brand called Snow Peak, which I don't think we've ever talked about here on the show. I'm sure both you guys are familiar. They're US flagship stores on 23rd in Portland, Oregon, a beautiful space that also has a sushi restaurant, plus like their meeting rooms and offices are upstairs. So people who go to Portland, go check out the Snow Peak store, but a very cool outdoor lifestyle brand from Japan. This is the recycled wool boa pullover fleece. Thank you, Santa Claus. It really fills out my closet in an important way. I really wanted like a fleece as somebody who has 2,000 hoodies, a bunch of Gore-Tex jackets, a bunch of puffies. I didn't have a good fleece. I got a good fleece now. BPC. Thank you, Snow Peak, a very cool Japanese brand.
Rad. Your life is complete. You've got your entire closet dialed in now.
Yeah. And we should say we just posted the Fly Low episode this week where I literally bought the shirt that the founder was wearing while we were recording, and he used it as his BPC. I bought a second one of those too. So
that's great.
I forget the name of the product, but you can go find the fleece button up sort of shirt jacket from Fly Low too. I'm really up in my fleece game here, boys.
I think it was the Irwin fleece.
Yeah, the Irwin fleece. I've got both colors now, black and brown.
If you're on our Substack or you get our emails, actually linked that in there. And I even said something like, Dylan actually bought the shirt during the podcast.
Steve Holmberg, great to get back on the horn, buddy. Welcome back.
Great to see you guys. Happy 2026.
Happy 2026. Everybody listening, jump in Slack, follow us on LinkedIn, Instagram, sign up for the newsletter, secondnature.media. For Stephen Holmberg, Aaron Lutzi, I'm Debo. See you guys next time.